We are Muskegon County at Work, spotlighting workers of local governments throughout our county, revealing what it takes to make our communities comfortable and safe. Hello, everybody. Welcome for yet another episode of Muskegon Municipalities at Work. Your host here, DJ Hilson, and we have yet another outstanding and intriguing interview today. Joining me today is Emily Morgenstern. She works for the Muskegon Police Department, but is not a police officer. We're going to find out more about that here in just a second. Hello, Emily. Welcome.
Hi, DJ. Thanks for having me.
Oh, it's great to have you. So, as I always like to start these conversations out, I want you to talk a little bit about yourself, who you are, what you do, how you got to where you're at today.
Yeah, so born and raised here in Muskegon in Norton Shores. Went to Muskegon Catholic.
Great
Go
school.
Crusaders.
Go Crusaders.
I wanted to get away from Muskegon, so I went to college at Loyola University, Chicago. It was great. Being in the big city was fun. But then I realized that I wanted to be a little closer to home. So I actually got a job in Grand Rapids out of college. And I still realized that I kind of missed Muskegon. So I actually interned with the Chamber of Commerce back in 2019. And I really had no idea what a Chamber of Commerce was, but it was so great being in that role. I got to know all of the exciting things that was happening in Muskegon, and I just know that I wanted to be a part of it. So I was able to get a full-time job there, worked there for about 4 years. And then in 2023, I got a new job at the city of Muskegon as the police community coordinator.
Yeah, and you know, what's for me, what's sort of fascinating about that role is I'm trying to remember when, and maybe you know the answer to this question, when they started that role in the police department. Because I go back to the time when Denny Powers fit that role. And I think he was the first, if I'm not mistaken.
He was, yeah. So they created that the late 90s, early 2000s when they kind of switched to that community policing style. The income tax had passed in the city of Muskegon, so they were able to put more money into public safety and have that designated role as a civilian that can help bridge that gap between the community and the police department.
So we're going to. I want to talk about what your role is and what you do, but let's talk a little globally. This idea of community policing and what the city of Muskegon has done, sort of to encompass that attitude.
Yeah. So obviously, I mean, in the history of the United States, police has not had a favorable taste in people's mouth. So that changed in the late 90s. They really wanted the citizens to know that the police are here to help. But I think also, too, just having that civilian, the person not in uniform, being that liaison from the police to the community is so important, because I think people are more likely inclined to listen to someone that's just like me and you, that doesn't wear a badge and a uniform. And that can kind of be that bridge to both sides. And, you know,
what's unique about the city, and I'm sure this is true maybe for other jurisdictions across the country, but, you know, for Muskegon County, what's been unique about the city is that, you know, they have taken sort of this, the neighborhoods are divided. I mean, they have their own names, but within those neighborhoods are I'll say relatively, if not very active neighborhood associations. And I can't remember if because of this role, the city decided to designate or create a community policing bureau that designated an officer for each one of those areas. But talk a little bit about how that has made a difference, at least from your perspective, in building that police community relationship.
Yeah, I think our neighborhood, we have 15 neighborhoods in the city of Muskegon, and our neighborhood associations, they've been around before the community policing. But I think that's a big part of it, too, because our city is so diverse from the west end to the east end and in the middle downtown. So having those designated officers that know those issues and know those residents is really important. But then also having that civilian person that knows the breadth of the city, because, you know, Beechwood, Bluffton, they're going to have different issues than Angel neighborhood. That's going to have different issues than Nelson neighborhood. So having that person that really knows all the different, you know, flavors of the city and where the police need to do their job is super important.
So what's a day in a life like? What is a typical day for Emily when it comes to fulfilling this role?
So it's never the same day, which I like, because I like being kept on my toes. So a majority of my role is doing outreach. So that is whether it's having community conversations or events, and then as well as grant reporting, because we have to have funds to get things done. So a lot of it right now, so I'm planning the Citizens Police workshop. So I'm planning an event in November where citizens get to come in and learn the role of an officer, and they get to actually be put in the shoes. So they're going to do like a traffic stop, and they're going to have to think, what are they going to do, when this incident happens. But then also, I'm doing trick-or-treatings right now. It's Halloween, so having the youth, that aspect of it. But then another big thing that we're working on is recruitment. So I'm working with our captain continuously and Chief Kozel on recruitment, and having a marketing background. I'm able to kind of, add in that. So we're reaching out to, college young people. We're reaching out to certified police officers right now. So it's a lot of different things. But I love it because it keeps me busy.
Absolutely. Well, I want to talk a little bit more about the Citizens. It was called the Citizens Police Academy. I like workshop. That's a nice ring to it. Obviously, you've said it's sort of putting citizens or giving citizens the opportunity to see what it's actually like to be a police officer. Talk to me, or not to me, but talk to me and the folks here about why that workshop has been so successful and why it's important that people get a chance to see what it's like.
I think so. We're huge, especially Chief Kozel is on the different touches we have on the community. So most of the time, people are going to interact with police in a negative setting. They're either going to be pulled over for a traffic stop, or they're going to have to call 911 for an emergency. And sometimes when you call 911, they're not always happy with what the police officers do. So in this workshop, we're able to give that background about everything that's happening with an officer. So what's happening before they come and, you're calling 911, what's happening when they pull you over, why they pull you over, and all the other things about their jobs that, an average person doesn't usually get to see. So it starts off with presentations. We talk about use of force. We talk about how, most of the time we're not drawing our guns. And if we do, we have to submit a lot of paperwork. And everyone knows when we do that. We also talk about de-escalation. Police, especially in the last 5 years, have had a lot of training in de-escalation to, not escalate situations further. And then also our co-response team. So our social worker from Health West is paired up with a mental health officer. We talk about that. But then we also get to have people, it's called Milo. It's kind of like a video game. They're on a 911 call, and they're able to talk back to that. And they get to see the situation, the video changes on how, they respond. So it's really interesting. And then we'll have our officers there kind of explaining, this is what I would have done, or this is why you don't do that. And I think everyone walks away with a better understanding. The citizens walk away with a better understanding, but then I think the officers walk away too with a better understanding of what citizens really think about them in their profession.
This may be an unfair question, but I'm going to ask it anyways. What kind of feedback do you get, at the end? Because how long is that? Is it like a 12-week deal? I can't remember how long. So
it's actually just a one day. We used to do a 16-week workshop, but we realized that not everyone has that time anymore.
Yeah.
So this will be our 4th time doing this one-day workshop, and the feedback has been mostly that citizens don't realize everything that's going through an officer's head when they respond to a call. They realize that, they're not just pulling people over for the sake of pulling people over. And I think they walk away with a greater respect of all the training that our officers do have for any situation they might be in.
So how does somebody learn more about it, or more importantly, sign up? How do we do that?
Yeah, you can go to City of Muskegon's website, also our Facebook page, Muskegon Police, and October 29th is when we need to have people apply by.
And is this open to anybody, or do you have to be a City of Muskegon resident?
It's open to anyone. We prefer our residents, but we also have a few people that don't live in the City of Muskegon that are actually thinking of a profession in law enforcement. So that's great too for those younger people to kind of get their toes in the water.
So let's talk a little bit about recruitment. I mean, obviously over the last, I'll say 4 to 5 years, it's been hard. Not only here in the city, but across Muskegon County and across the state, across the nation. What have you found to be a successful recruiting tools or methods in order to get people at least engaging in the conversation of why law enforcement can be a fulfilling career?
I think it is really hard because not a lot of people want to be police officers, and I don't blame them. You see the national news, you see the headlines of those officers that are in bad situations. But for those people that, do have that call of service and they want to be officers, I think our biggest thing is, in the city of Muskegon, you're busy. We have, over 50,000 calls per year. But you're going to get to do those fun things that larger departments do, but you're going to be a name. You're not going to just be a badge number at the city of Muskegon. All of command, they're going to know you. You're going to know everyone that works there. But you're also going to know your residents that work there. And it's not just the community officers that residents know. We have our different districts. So those people in there, whether you're day shift, night shift, you really get to know the community. And I think for our officers that want to be, you want to be an officer because you want to serve. And I think you really get that satisfaction in the city of Muskegon of knowing that you are doing a good job and it's not going unnoticed.
So, as you mentioned, I think in sort of the beginning, obviously you've got you wear a lot of hats. It's quite clear, and some important ones. So let's talk a little bit about building that relationship between community and law enforcement, and some of the either things you do or the events that you have been a part of that have really helped develop and strengthen that relationship.
One thing that we started doing in the last year and a half, because obviously police in the Black community don't have a great relationship. So Chief Kozal and I, we've identified community members that are Black men, and we have just sat down with other officers and we've listened to them. And they've shared their experiences either with our police department or other police departments. And we were just in a room, we've met probably 4 or 5 times, and we just sat down and listened. And I think that's been the biggest thing is listening. And I think that's been the most productive thing because now we're able to go back to our officers. We have all the training they do, but we're like, hey, let's think about it through this lens. And I think that's been the most important part is being able to sit down with people. Because, myself, I haven't had any negative interactions with police, but I want to help fix the people that have had negative interactions. And then I think having those people that have had negative interactions, being able to sit down with a police officer, not in uniform, and be like, okay, this is what's going through my head when I came to your call. And I think that just mutual understanding has been amazing, and it's gotten thus far. So then our officers are able to go back, so that's been in that conversation. They're able to go back to their coworkers and be like, hey, let's think about this. When we're on a call, let's think about this perspective. And then those community members are able to go back to their communities and be like, hey, have you thought about this? When you're getting pulled over for a traffic stop, this officer was thinking this, not you're Black, I'm going to pull you over. And I think that's just been huge, that listening and that mutual respect that I found with this.
So the power of communication, right?
Yes.
It's amazing what you can get accomplished by simply sitting and having a conversation.
Yep.
So now, kids, young people, how has sort of the I guess the area of, I won't say recruitment, but, engaging with young people, how has that sort of evolved over time, in particular now that you sit in this role?
Yeah, I think we've done a lot of different engagement with youth. We've started 3 years now. We've done pop-up parties in our neighborhoods where we have police and fire. We shut down a street. We have ice cream. We have games. We have music. And that's a really great interaction for those kids. And we've noticed, for the most part, some of the kids, I remember one time I think this girl was probably 2, and she was there with her mom, and she was so shy. She was scared. Her mom let us know, though, the police have been to her house before. It wasn't a positive experience. So then one of our officers, who has kids of his own, was able to talk with that kid, and that kid was so happy at the end of it. And we've noticed, those younger kids, from 2 to probably 12, they're always happy to see police officers. It's when they get into middle school and high school that they're not super happy. Whether that's been, they've just been told, don't trust the police, or they've seen, negative interactions with police officers in their homes before. But I think really grabbing those middle school and high schoolers, which we have our resource officers in both schools, and just being able to have those positive interactions with the kids is super helpful. Whether it's just an officer asking the kid, how are you doing today? Or handing them an ice cream cone, I think is so important. And we've also noticed with high schoolers, because now at Muskegon High School, they have the academy style learning. Those kids are thinking more about their careers, and these kids are seeing that they can actually be an officer, and they can be an officer in their hometown, which we would love for that to happen. But I think just having those little touches all the time contributes to that bigger picture.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's super important. Far too long, I think sometimes kids, in particular the teenage to young adult, I won't say get shoved to the side, but, I think they're starting to recognize that they have a voice and their voice matters. And as adults in particular positions, we want to hear that voice, right? I mean,
yeah.
Because again,
we need to.
From your perspective, I mean, it's a great recruitment tool. It's great for them to see the human side, if you will, that law enforcement, police officers are not robots. They're actual people with thoughts and feelings and, concerns and all those things, right? So you mentioned grants, and I really would like you to talk about how important grants are for public safety. Because, I would say recently there's been a lot of conversations about, at one point some grants were frozen, and then, sometimes in budget processes at all levels, grants seem to be sort of the forgotten tool, and yet they serve such a vital role in a lot of the important things that we do. So from a public safety perspective, how important are grants?
They're huge, and we're very thankful the city of Muskegon is in great support of public safety. You look at our budget, and a lot of our budget goes to the police and fire departments, but unfortunately, it takes a lot of money to keep those services up and running. So those grants, they allow us to do training, but they also allow us to have those specialties. So, you're familiar with the STOP grant. Yep. So we work with your office, the prosecutor's office, and Norton Shores Police. We have 2 dedicated detectives, 3 in total with Norton Shores, to focus on crimes that are against women. So we're focusing on, domestic violence and sexual assault against women, because that is a huge issue in our society. And unfortunately, if we don't have that grant funding, we can't have those dedicated detectives and those dedicated prosecutors to those issues, which are so important. And we're lucky to still have that grant with everything with the state and the federal budget. But unfortunately, we've had state funding cut with recruitment. So we've been able to pay for our officers to go through police academies, but we've also been able to pay them a wage to attend those police academies. And that funding is dwindling each year. So that is now back onto the departments to pay for that. But yeah, it's huge. And I think the biggest thing is everyone looks, well, police and fire, they get all, the city's money. That's where my tax money's going. And it's like, yes, but it's so necessary.
Right. Well, when you call 911, you hope that somebody shows up.
Yeah.
Right? I mean,
and it doesn't take, 3 hours.
Exactly. No, I mean, I really do think it's important that people understand that there isn't an ever-ending stream of funds to do certain things that people, I think, if you just explain to them, like the STOP grant, if you explain to them the program, oh yeah, I want that. Okay, well, here's what it's going to take in order for us to do that. And so I'm glad to hear your perspective on that, because I do think that it's really, really important we don't forget that additional funding from outside sources is good for public safety.
Yeah, and necessary.
All right, so what's coming up? I mean, what any kind of bold ideas that are swimming through your head on any of these issues that we've talked about that we can look forward to? Maybe the city of Muskegon Police exploring.
I think the biggest thing is just working on recruitment to getting us full staff, so then we can continue to do the things that we are doing. And then some. I would love to have a once a quarter citizens police workshop where people come in But unfortunately, we just don't have the manpower to do that all the time. And I would also love to do a pop-up party, every week throughout the entire year in every neighborhood. But, manpower, that's like the biggest thing. So, and I think one thing that I would love to bring back to the city of Muskegon that I know the previous chief did is a larger community conversation where, we have a dedicated issue that we might talk about and do it bi-monthly per quarter and just have, the chief there and other officers there to listen to the community. Because, we get phone calls, we get emails, we get the gripes, but we want to be able to actually listen to the issues that our citizens are facing.
Yeah, I mean, it goes back to something you've sort of highlighted throughout our conversation, and it's just about, it's conversation, right? It's talking, and it's listening and engaging at that very basic level goes a long, long way. I can't let you leave this conversation without talking about National Night Out. I know we've it's passed, but for the last couple years, it went from individual neighborhoods, kind of organizing their own sort of celebration to now the city sort of taking that on and saying, we're going to have this big party, but everybody's welcome. So talk to me about two areas, right? National Night Out, what is that? And then how is the city working towards celebrating that and it's in August, so I know we're past it, but I think it's an important thing to talk about. Yeah,
so I think one of my first goals when I came into this role was to help revamp National Night Out. So National Night Out, it's been happening for over 40 years. Obviously, nationwide effort to bridge that gap between police and community partnerships. So the city of Muskegon, all of our 15 neighborhood associations used to do their own thing. And I remember the first year, and I know you've done it too, myself, Chief Kozel, and the city manager, Jonathan, we ran around, tried to make it to every party. We made it, I think, to 12 of 15.
Pretty good.
But also our officers were running around. They couldn't make it to every neighborhood. So we wanted to, not only make it better for the officers to be able to socialize more, but for our community to come together. Because I think sometimes in the city of Muskegon, we get too siloed in our neighborhoods. So we consolidated it 2 years ago to Marshfield. We had no idea what to expect the first year, whether it was going to be 100 people to show up or it was, 800 like it was, which was great. It was a lot more successful than I thought. And this past year, we actually increased attendance to over 1,000. And I think it was just so much better for, our neighbors to get to know each other. And then also for our officers in more of our, patrol command to get out there in the community and get to know each other. But then we also got to partner with the sheriff's department. We got to partner with you, being in the home run derby.
I'm not sure being in it qualifies my participation, but I was there swinging a bat for sure.
Yeah. But then we were also able to bring in community organizations. They had their tables. We had over 25 organizations. So then they could get their information out to our residents as well. And I'm excited. It's, next year, I think it's going to be even better. Being our third year now, we now what to expect with the crowds. And I think it's just such a great time for the entire community to get out and celebrate each other.
Yeah, I mean, I tell you, having the former chief, Jeff Lewis, and I always made it our mission to try to get every single one, and you can't. I mean, it was nearly impossible. So to consolidate, bring everybody together under one umbrella, one roof, essentially, at a very historic location in the city is a brilliant idea, and it's worked. I've found it to be a lot of fun to be at. So thank you for making that change. I mean, I think it's really cool.
Yeah, it's a lot of fun doing it too.
So how do people, whether you're in the city, but city residents, how do they find out about, what's going on as far as community police activities? Where can they go?
I think our biggest thing, follow our Facebook page, our social media, Muskegon Police, but then also get involved in your neighborhood associations. Our neighborhood associations, they are doing so much, but there are so few people that are doing it. I'm part of the Nelson Neighborhood Association. It's always like the same 10 people doing the same thing. But we want our neighbors to know what's happening in our neighborhoods. And then through those neighborhood associations, they have such a great partnership, not only with the police department, but the entire city. So really get involved in those neighborhood associations. And then also follow, the City of Muskegon. We do our newsletter. We do e-news once a month. We always have that great information too in there.
So it really, unless you're hiding under a rock, you can find out what the heck's going on.
Yes.
Perfect. Well, Emily, thank you so much for being with me today. Thank you for what you do in helping to really strengthen that. I'm not even going to call it a divide because the divide seems too wide, but that strengthen that relationship between community and law enforcement. I think that's why City of Muskegon and some of our other law enforcement partners, we've come a lot farther than the national average, if you will, when it comes to communication and relationships with community and law enforcement.
Absolutely. We're very lucky in Muskegon County to have the relationships that we do.
Amen to that. Well, thank you again. Always good to see you. Well, ladies and gentlemen, that wraps up yet another episode of Muskegon Municipalities at Work. Thank you for continuing to tune in and look at the different areas of local government that affect you, and more importantly, the people behind the scenes that are making those local units and departments work efficiently and effectively. Until the next time, DJ Hilson signing off, and this program does not have any legs to it without the ingenuity of one Mike Vogus.